Hello, I'm Dargo Pennington III, and welcome to Observe the Observance. On today's show, we get a rare glimpse into a very unique and sometimes misunderstood creature that has ever walked the face of the earth, the writer. You will get to see in all its glory the writer in its natural habitat, in its most awkward of states, and most glorious of beautiful, shining brightness. It is breathtaking in a sight to behold, for sure. Let's get on with our show, shall we? Here we get a rare glimpse at the writer in all his glory. Pre-coffee, of course. Now, as you can clearly see, the writer has found his coffee. A very essential tool to this very interesting. The writer happens to now have found what we call a little bit of inspiration. Oh no, it's just as I feared. The writer has now gone off the rails. Another world has consumed him. The world of Facebook. There is no telling where our observations may lead us now. Oh yes, so rare is a creature like the writer. After a long day's battle, ultimately, nature's best remedy has won. May we hope that his dreams are permeated with words and that the writer will be back to do what a writer does so well. Oh, sleep tight, sweet prince. Oh, that was glorious and marvelous. What an incredible opportunity did we just have to observe one of life's greatest mysteries, and certainly one of its greatest gifts. The writer remains one of those mysterious creatures that, even in observance, we just don't know where and how it may affect all of us. But it is always good to know that it is out there. And the writer knows only one thing, and one thing it only knows. And that is, it's time to go indie now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of GoIndieNow. You know, we're coming out of National Novel Writing Month, and in honor of that, I've decided that this month we would feature 4 authors. Now, they're all unique and different, and you'll kind of find that there's a little crossover with a lot of other art forms that these guys have all experienced or are part of. And we're going to start with the first interview of our show, which is Mr. Andy Lefton. Now, Andy is a gifted fantasy writer who has dabbled in other genres and is looking forward to expanding his horizons. But he's really got this great fantasy series that he's been pumping out, and it's really awesome. You need to go check it out. And on top of that, he's a big comic guy, and he has his sights set on doing some comic books as well. So we look forward to talking about that in the future. But here's our conversation on writing. What's your favorite thing about writing, Andy?
Writing. You know, there's these days that every author knows this, where it just comes out of you. You can't stop it. You know, you sit down and it just flows. That's the part that I love. That's happened to me maybe 3 times in my life. I wrote one piece that is currently being published in an anthology by J. Ellington Ashton in October. It's just this piece that I wrote on Halloween. It's this dark, pretty classic horror feel to it. And it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep. I got up Halloween's evening, hour and a half, hammered it out, barely touched it since then. You know, every time I read it, it gives me chills. Another one is this comic book script that will be published the next year or so. And it just came to me as I was driving with my wife to go shopping, and I pulled over and I, you know, typed out stuff on my iPad, and I don't remember what happened when we were shopping because the whole time I was texting myself notes. That's the good part about writing. Then there's the other side, you know, where you're slogging through the scenes where the character is walking down the hallway to get to the great scene that you want to write, but you can't get there until he walks down the hallway. You know, that's the not so fun part.
Up in Japan, give you a different perspective, you feel, on life and things?
Absolutely. It's interesting. Last year I wrote about it in one guest post, that none of my characters have a sense of belonging. For example, the hunter, the character in this dark fantasy series, he has no idea where he was born, who his parents are, where he's from, even who he is. In the Atlantis novel, the main character was transplanted from his home to another city. In another story, the protagonist is sold by her father into slavery. Like, none of these characters have a sense of home, and that really stems from the fact that you know, I was born in Japan, traveled around a lot. I don't really have a country that is my own. So it's an interesting subconscious thing that's been fused into my work.
About your journey to becoming a published author?
Well, that is quite the interesting question. I mean, you know, it's different for everybody. I started out, like a lot of authors I know, self-publishing. My first novel in the days, is a historical fiction, fantasy, sci-fi novel. Tons of fun to write, has, you know, decent reviews, but as I was writing it and publishing it and getting feedback, I realized that as much as I love to write and as good as I think I am, there's a lot better that things could be, you know, with a good editorial team, people to look over it and say, you know, this needs to change. You've got to fix that up. So between the launch of the self-published novel and the publication of my first dark fantasy book, Blade of the Destroyer, I got a complete team of beta readers and alpha readers, and contacted the publisher. I actually finished Blade of the Destroyer in of 2014. I had the book completely done, professionally edited, a cover, like everything was ready to go. And I decided, okay, I'm going to give this a few months to find a publisher. And so as I was shopping it around to different publishers, I set up the book launch, got people to do book reviews and interviews and stuff. And in January of 2015, my publisher, J. Ellington Ashton, they said, you know, we want it.
Is that a small press that you did it with?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Did they inquire with you about your social media outreach and all of that before taking you on, or was it just a matter of they loved the material and they just decided, you know what, we're going to publish it?
Yeah, they look for quality. They do really good books. Everything that I've read from them has been very, very well written. So they focus on quality. And the truth is that, like most indie publishers, there's not a lot that they can do marketing and publicity wise. A lot of it falls on the author. The majority of it falls on the author. So obviously they did look into my social media and website, but really what they wanted was quality work.
You talk about on your own website about you have a certain grasp of SEO. So what do you think is the biggest misconception about SEO?
That it's easy and controllable. You know, you see a lot of these sort of suspicious services they're offering to get you to #1 on Google's pages. Maybe they can do that, but they're not going to do it the right way. The truth is that search engine optimization is crazy complicated. Just like marketing on Twitter or Facebook or anything, it is a full-time job. So part of SEO is optimizing your content. For example, every Monday, I post creative writing resources. And I have the keyword as creative writing. So if you Google creative writing resources, you'll find my page in the top 10 or the top 20 or whatever. Research of what keywords are good, how to use them right.
When you look at other authors' websites, what infuriates you the most about it? What do you find as a common mistake?
I find a lot of authors have stuck with one of two things. Either a blog spot or Wix or Weebly or any of those paid services, or they've gone with one of those really cheap blogger templates. You know, the ones that are like 3 colors and a kind of a crappy font. And the truth is that as an author, you have no idea how to do any of this stuff. You know, you've no idea how to market. You have no idea how to build a website. The only reason I have a half decent looking website is because my brother is a web designer. And I said, look, put me something together. And he did. And so since he did that, I kind of been learning about it more. And I recently upgraded the template and learning how to use the different plugins and stuff. But the truth is that it's really difficult for people to take you seriously if you have a super simple website, because they do want to see that you know what you're doing.
Most authors are introverts, though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but you have done an excellent job of getting yourself out there and putting yourself out there. So what's one thing you would tell other introverts to do to start the ball rolling, to get them to kind of come out of their shell?
Fake it till you make it. That's my motto in life. You know, if you see me at home with my wife, my family, her family, friends, I'm the guy sitting in the corner reading a book. You see me at a convention or an author conference or something like that, I'm the big loud guy calling to people across the way. You know, I was at the Texas Book Festival last year, and all of the authors would sit down. You know, they'd talk to people who would come up to their table. I was standing up, you know, fueled on coffee, of course, calling out to people, you know, hey, welcome to the Texas Book Festival. You know, what brings you here? What's your poison? Just sort of making a fool out of myself. And, you know, but really all I wanted to do was sit down and read my book and be happy. So the truth is that the only way to do it is just fake it till you make it.
Nice. So what's one tip you'd give an author about getting their book reviewed? What's one thing that they can do right off the bat that'll help them get more reviews and better reviews?
Offer to review someone else's.
There you go.
I would say that a pretty significant chunk of my reviews have come from people who I've said, hey, you know, they've posted on Facebook in the groups that I'm in, and I said, hey, look, I saw your book. It looks like it could be really interesting. I'd be happy to look it over to see if I want to review it for my blog. I do reviews on my website. They send me the book. I say, oh, this book looks great. I'll review it. And I'll write a review. And then I'll say, you know, would you want to review my book in return? I give them a short detail about my book and say, I want 100% honesty. If it's a 2-star review, tell me why it's bad and so I can make it better. And to this day, I've gotten, I think, 1 or maybe 2 3-star reviews from authors who said, look, this book was great, but there's this is wrong with it. Mm-hmm. And the truth is that most authors are really, really looking for book reviews. So you're offering to review theirs, they'll often accept it. And a lot of people will say, you know, Amazon penalizes those sort of review exchanges, but don't look at it like you're doing a review swap, 5-star for 5-star, 4-star for 4-star. Look at it as you're offering to help someone else out, and they're doing a favor for you too.
What does the word indie mean to you?
You know, I know indie is a label that people tack on anybody who's not traditionally published with one of the larger publishers. And I understand that indie could also mean self-published, or the kind of people who just slap a book together and post it up on Amazon because they want to make a quick buck, you know, or use it like dinosaur porn. That right there, that was when I knew that self-publishing had sort of reached a new low, you know. Hilarious, loved every line, but it was just total ridiculousness. But indie publishing is so broad. You know, there's so many amazing indie authors out there, and I'm glad that people have stopped looking at indie authors with that stigma that used to be on self-published authors. Literally 2 years ago, when I was sending out books for review to different sites. 50% of the sites that I saw said, we don't take self-published books. Now I've been compiling a list of 500 to 1,000 review websites and blogs, and most of them say, we support indie authors, we love self-published, and all of them have the caveat of, please make sure it's professionally edited and it's, like it has to be good. So I think now the indie name isn't as reviled, let's say, as it used to be. But it's up to all of us indie authors to keep making sure that our books really are up to par with the excellence that people have come to expect. Heck, if we can make our books as good as the traditionally published, the big five books, then not only does that say a lot for the indie genre or the indie world as a whole, but heck, it could give us a good deal with the publisher.
My many thanks to Andy Peliquin for that great interview. You can check out his fantasy series, The Last Bushalari, and I apologize, Andy, if I butchered that. And also, go check out his YouTube channel. He's got a kick-ass YouTube channel where he does some panels, and he also talks about writers' issues. It's cool. So check it out. All right, we'll be right back after.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Jin Okubo for GoIndieNow, and this is about my book review. It's a 2-minute book review, and this month's is When Every Month is NaNoWriMo by Larry Brooks. It's a very interesting book. I've always been afraid of NaNoWriMo. I've never really wanted to do it, and this year I thought about doing it for about a split second, and then I decided not to again. This book is a must-read. If you ever plan on doing NaNoWriMo or you're curious about it, this book is a must-read. And the reason is because it's very insightful. It's a guide. It's guiding you. It leads you to the point of not only finishing a novel in NaNoWriMo, but making it a possible bestseller. It almost feels like a creative writing course, all condensed and in an easy to follow, easy to absorb format. It takes you step by step because NaNoWriMo, I've always seen it as, okay, people sit down and they pound away at the keyboard. Well, this book tells you, no, plan ahead. Do all your character layout, all that, plan it ahead so that when you sit down in November, all you have left to do is the writing. The story's already been created. You're just going to put the word to paper. And this will leave you with a much stronger book. So again, the review for this month's is When Every Month is NaNoWriMo by Larry Brooks. Please get it. Please enjoy it. I'm Jin Okubo. My books are Love, and then Kaoru in Love's Shadow. Then you have Memories and Brotherhood. And as well, at jinokubo.com, under editing services, I provide editing services for copyright editing and line editing. You can also find me on Facebook under Jin Okubo. Nice to see you all, and please come and drop by my pages. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. My next guest, Mr. Jeremy Strasser, and I, when we interviewed, I had asked him a question because Time Life book series was one of the catalysts and one of the things that got him going into this enormous passion that he has for history. So I joked with him and asked him, what his Time Life series about him would be named. And I tongue-in-cheekly said, War, What Is It Good For? But, the funny thing is that Jeremy has this beautiful, beautiful outlook on life, and he is really making a difference in terms of showing us a peaceful resolution and showing us the effects of war and what it does to us as human beings, not just economically and socially, but physically and emotionally. And not only that, but he's showing us the effects of it on our planet, on our future, on our children's futures, and what we can do to avoid it. Because in truth, the necessary evil of war has long been debated about, and Jeremy has a fresh and unique take on it. What's your favorite part about the writing process?
The actual writing. When I am writing, I feel as if I am just releasing whatever is in there. And it is a bliss for me to just sit there and type it out. Um, I enjoy the research, but the writing is really where I get the most value. And I could literally be typing for 5 hours and not realize that that time has gone by. And I'm in my head, I'm in this story, and I'm just letting the history flow. And that is, if I could just do that for the rest of my life, I mean, it's like a drug, honestly.
Talk about how you went from working from the Department of Defense to being basically a novelist.
High school, growing up in the LA area, I had an opportunity to work at the Los Angeles Times as an intern between my junior and senior year of high school, and I started reading the newspaper every day. And this was in the early 90s, and there was a war going on in a place far off known as Bosnia. And I had never heard of it before, but as somebody who liked military things, I just couldn't believe that there was a war going on in Europe where people were being killed. It just blew my mind. And so I vowed to myself that I would try to stop that. And the path I chose to do that was to go to work for either the UN or NATO. And for the next 6 years of my life, I went to undergrad and grad school, got a bachelor's in international relations and a master's in international security policy, got a Fulbright fellowship to go study NATO and the EU and how the two work together, and then got to a presidential management fellowship to go to work for the government for 2 years anywhere I wanted. And I went into the NATO policy office in the State Department. So I basically was on a track, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew exactly where I wanted to go. And I got to the NATO policy office and I realized these people aren't going to stop war. This is not the place I needed to be. And that was very disheartening because I had worked so many years to do that. And one day I was in a friend's office because she had offered free cupcakes after a party that they'd had. And I was gathering up the cupcakes and I overheard her boss on the phone say, "I'm going to go need somebody to take care of it." And as disheartened as I was willing to go over and do anything. And he turned out to need somebody to go to Vietnam. And so I said, okay, I'll go. What is it? And it turned out to be helping plan and then remove unexploded ordnance left over from the Vietnam War. About 30% of the bombs we dropped on Vietnam didn't go off. And at least on a weekly basis, you read a story about a child somewhere picking up something that looks like a toy and blowing themselves up. And that broke my heart. And so I wanted to do what I could to help fix that as much as possible. And so seeing that and being a part of that and helping remove those bombs, I just decided, okay, I still need to try to stop war. The path I chose isn't the right path. How can I do it? And it takes me back to a quote from Kurt Vonnegut that writing a book to stop war is like trying to write a book to stop a glacier. You're not going to get anywhere. But the way I see it is, instead of writing books to stop war, maybe I could write books to go into classrooms that kids who are developing their understanding of the world could read a story about a personal experience in war and understand, oh, this is all done at the human level. War is about human interaction and human violence against other people. And if I could get them to think that, maybe at some point in the future, one person who read my stories is a decision maker and chooses a non-violent path instead of a violent path. And maybe somebody will be saved because of that. And if I could keep writing and if I could keep doing that and if I could get my books out and put them into schools or put them into any kind of place where people can read them, maybe I can have that influence. And so that's the hope I hold on to, and that's what drives me to continue writing.
in going to Vietnam and working there, what was the most surprising story you heard in your time when talking to people there?
Like I said, it was just the fact that people are still dying from a war that ended 40 years ago. And it just, I mean, it hurts me to even think about it right now that somebody who has absolutely nothing to do with a decision made in Washington, D.C. 60 years ago dies because they happen upon an object that looks like something they can have fun with.
So what was the deciding factor in going into a first-person narrative as opposed to just recounting stories and creating, you've essentially created a fictional world because of the choice you made with that?
Yeah. Yeah, it was hard to make that choice, but the reason I did it is because I feel like everything that anyone ever experiences in the world is experienced in the first person. And so if I want somebody to experience what it's like to be in that moment, I need to put it in those eyes. And if I don't do that, then it's what I've experienced in history is it's stale otherwise. And I love reading other people's history books. I love reading things that aren't always in the first person. But if I want an emotional connection to an event, I need to see it.
Did you know that you were going to create this, what you've done in a series? Is that something that you planned?
And not at all. I claim to be a strategic planner and a strategic thinker, but I did not do so in this case. It was actually, the reason it's a series is because right now I have probably at least 3,000 stories that are waiting to be written. And I just keep writing them, pushing them out, writing them, pushing them out. And I could probably write for 10, 15 hours a day straight and never finish the stories I have, let alone the ones I keep coming across as I research. So, I mean, if I'm lucky and if I could do this professionally, I mean, there may be 50, 100, who knows how many books.
You might have a unique perspective on my next question, which is give one tip for doing research.
Very much like my original career, if you only do research in one area towards one targeted goal, you're going to miss so many opportunities along the way. Whereas if you open yourself up, you can find things you didn't even know existed. You keep learning. And that is one of the things I love most about doing the research is that I keep learning. Like this morning, I had set myself, okay, I'm going to write a new chapter in a book I'm working on. And I needed to look one thing up about a particular guy. And I spent the next 3 hours just researching this guy and his history and just being fascinated by him. And all I needed was this one little thing. But now I know all of that information. And that will probably feed multiple stories in the future because now it's all in my head.
If you were to give a grade to our educational system on how much they entice the youth to want to learn about history, what grade would you give them?
I mean, I don't want to put every teacher in here because I had some fantastic history teachers, but the system and the way that everybody has to learn the same thing, I would really just give it an F. There is no inspiration to understand history. I came to it on my own. What I'm trying to do, and I think it could be useful if lots of other people do it, is make history personal. Make history be able to be viewed from the perspective of the person going through it. And that will make it exciting for the people learning about it. Because if I'm a junior high school student and I'm told dates and to memorize things, that's not going to do anything for me. But if I'm told about a junior high school aged person in a war who was going through this traumatic event, wow, that is very personal, and that I'll remember. So if they could turn history into that, which is what I'm trying to do, I think it would be really powerful and really compelling for people to learn more about it.
What does the term indie mean to you? And I have a follow-up question to that, which is, what's the best thing about being indie?
All right. The term indie means to me that I am on my own in terms of the logistics, but I am in a community in terms of other people trying to do the same thing. And so if I could tap into that community, I get more powerful, but I got to do it all myself. Or I can hire other people to do it for me and spend a lot of money. In terms of the best part of being independent is there are no gatekeepers. I could literally put out anything I want and nobody can tell me I can't do that. And nobody can tell me, oh, the market doesn't want that. because I don't care what somebody else thinks the market wants. I care what a small group of people who like what I write want to read. And so I put my stuff out for them, and hopefully I could grow that group over time. And no agent, nobody else is going to say, no, nobody wants that.
Complete this sentence. If history has taught us anything.
It's taught us not to overreact. Humans have a tendency to freak out and then do things that they later regret. And that includes, supporting different political regimes, having revolutions in certain ways, and, responding to terrorist attacks in certain ways. And history has clearly taught us, take a moment, think about what happened, think about its true effect on who you are and what you want, and then decide what to do. Don't just react based on your lizard mind, because when you do, you're gonna make a mistake. And and people will die. And that's, we don't need that. We're smarter than that.
Another great interview. My many thanks to Jeremy Strasser for that. Inside of this interview, at the end there, where I posted his links, there was a little pop-up. That's a YouTube channel in which Jeremy was featured on. He did some great in-depth spoken word conversations and had some great stories that go a little bit more in depth into the conversations that we had here. So definitely check those out. All right, everybody, we'll be right back.
Correct. so much stronger than before. Reaches deep down inside, leaves a blistering sore. I breathe out, but it's too heavy to breathe back in. Can't find my way through. Thoughts keep coming back to you. I'm down on my knees, but it's drained all my power. I'm just begging for release to get me through the hours. I wake after dreaming of you, but all that's renewed is the bitter loss of you. I'm scared to let go.
My next guest, Mr. Tory Gates, has been in radio broadcasting for just over 30 years. But he comes from a rich musical background in which his family helped enlighten him as a young child to the music of the world. It's that passion that led him to become a musician during his stint as a radio broadcaster and has continued on as a musician. But it isn't until now that he's found his true calling and passion, which is writing novels. And there's a good reason for it. He's really good at it. So, I mean, along the lines of writing the novels, what do you like about the process that you don't get from writing songs?
That process is really good on a number of levels for me. It's always been a really good test for me in terms of my discipline. In broadcasting, you have to be very disciplined about being punctual, about how you go about things, and you have to remember, when you're on the public airwaves, there are laws you have to follow. You have protocol at work, you have all these procedures, and you must do that.
Mm-hmm.
Applying it to something like writing at first was a little difficult. When I was much younger, it was, I just wasn't mature enough to be able to do it. I look at it now, and I think what it does is it's another task where it's going to be very long form, and you're going to have to really think about it, and you're going to have to just apply to it each day. And for a writing process, for me, I mean, it's a little easier for me because I'm not married any longer and I don't have kids. So my job is one thing. I have enough free time to be able to say, okay, I'm going to block this out. When you have a family, it's very different. You have to really make some time and have a family that understands that, okay, I'm going to be doing this for a while and I need to go do this. And that's not always an easy thing to do. For me, I have the freedom to do it. So there's that. Trying to make the next story a little different from the one before. I have kind of written to a form over the years, but I've been breaking out of that fairly well in recent years, which is good. So each story is a bit different. We go to different places, hopefully. Characters aren't the same as the ones before. And I just try to do it like that. And then, of course, we have the other fun part of it, which is therapy. Right has been that. It's been very good therapy. It's allowed me to deal with my depression to some extent. It's allowed me to deal with some of my different phases. And it's also allowed me to really kind of look back at parts of my life that I just kind of burned right through them. And while I remember them, I didn't have, shall we say, the most typical of adolescence and the most typical of young adulthood. It wasn't any different when anybody else went through, but I lost some of it somewhere. And it's kind of like
Yeah.
good to look back, not live in it, but look back and say, okay, I remember this now. Now I can write about it. Now I can move forward.
So, Tori, you have a fascinating life story. Tell everybody where it began and from the evolution of you making music to now writing books.
Well, I think what's happened with me, Joe, is that I've been kind of an entertainer all of my life. I think being the youngest in the family, you find yourself kind of doing that, hopefully to get some attention or to get somebody to look at you. And not always does it really work the way you want it to. It's, I guess it was just one of those things that it was a part of me. And it really is kind of like that in my family in a lot of ways. From the music side in particular, because I grew up in a small town in Northwest Vermont on a dairy farm. My family still runs it. And music was just a thing in the family. My father was a trumpet player during the big band era. Let's see, my oldest brother, Mark, was a musician for many, many years, fantastic guitar player, still makes some instrumental recordings and stuff that he sells. My brother David was a very good singer, and I just kind of floated around with a lot of different things. Writing was something I was always doing. I was always coming up with stories and writing stories and stuff like that, but I never really made a serious effort for a long time. I got to college, I thought journalism was something I would do. That did not happen right away. That kind of came later. I just got into radio because it just looked attractive to me. It looked interesting, and I always loved music. So I have done that now for 32 years. I've largely been able to work in a business that I've been able to kind of do what I've wanted to do. And even if not, you've learned how to sort of adapt your skills. Music was just something that was more of a hobby, songwriting, poetry, and stuff like that. I ended up in a band called Altira from like 2006 to 2010. We had it's kind of like a new age rock band. It was 6 of us, and we all had completely twisted musical differences and styles, but we had a lot of fun. We made some good music and made some great friends. And music is now kind of part of the vehicle for some of the writing I do. Now, long story short, for the writing, I've been seriously writing for about 10 years. I finally decided I was going to make a go of it. I was going to really work on some of these ideas that I'd had, and I've had a really good string of creativity. And now I'm very thankful to say that Sunbury Press Books, which is a small press here in the mid-state of Pennsylvania, they seem to like me. They put out A Moment in the Sun, which is a dream come true, to get an actual publisher. And yes, it is a small press, but they've been really kind about letting me write this. We are informally ready to do another one next year, maybe one after that. So it's a good situation, and I think A Moment in the Sun turned out to be a really good story, much better than I anticipated it would be. I didn't realize it would strike people quite as it has, but it seems to have done.
You did a ton of research, though, for this book, for A Moment in the Sun especially. So give people out there one tip in researching that they may not necessarily think is a good thing to do when you're researching.
Always stay open to any kind of anything news-wise or history-wise that you might come across. Even if you're in the middle of the writing process or you even finished a draft, you might find a little information that it's like a research paper. All of a sudden, here's another source. And it's like, okay, where can I incorporate this? Where can I fit this? It just makes it a better story. When you are dealing with something that is very specific, if you are dealing with a specific problem or a specific, like a social phenomenon or something like that, I didn't know what the hikikomori was until I read a story about it on the BBC website. I had no clue. And that story in itself set the table for something that I'd already written. And I was looking at it and thinking, oh my God, I know some of this. And some of the people, the different reasons why people felt lonely.
do you listen to music when you're writing?
Yes, and it's interesting because music will drive a lot of it gets me into a rhythm. Usually what I will do is I don't usually listen to any specific music when I'm writing unless it is something that is integral, that's the right word, or important to it. Now, I was born in 65, and I love telling this story. See, my two brothers are much older than me, but they grew me up on the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, the Doors, CCR, all of that I remember. When I was 3, I knew all the words to 19th Nervous Breakdown. I don't know what that says about me, but it says something. And that music always meant a lot to me, even when I didn't fully understand it. And as I got, older, and as I got into radio, went to college, I was exposed to a lot of different music, and that music has always been there for me. The blues always touched me in a specific way that I still don't fully understand, but the blues became part of the Sweet Dreams series, and music just sort of drove me through it and helped me bring out some ideas.
So you use it more as an emotional connection for yourself, but does it help when you're engaging in an emotional scene? Do you use that as you pick a specific song, or you go, oh wait, you know what, I'm going to go back to this song because I think that will help me with this scene?
Yes, sometimes I will do that. Certain songs sometimes will just pop up in the middle of my writing, and suddenly I realize there's a reason for it. There's an awful lot of musicians in my stories. I don't know why, but it's interesting because in A Moment in the Sun, one of the characters that Ray meets, Masato, is a musician. And he is someone who uses it to sort of help him through the issues that he faces as an isolated person, as a hikikomori. And he's a guy who's managed to step out. He's managed to lead a little bit and help others. The music is quite often the only friend people have.
Music is, you're so right about music and how it connects people and connects to you, and you feel like sometimes the artist is speaking to you, and that's something you don't get from anything else. It's just that direct connection that, and you feel like they understand you. And
yeah, you hear that saying. It's like that song could have been written for us or written for
yeah, exactly.
Those are the mark of great songs, and I don't think you can really contrive that. It's just something that works.
What does the term indie mean to you?
I guess for me, the one thing would always be that no matter what I do, as long as I feel that I'm true to what is important to my principles, not from spiritual or religious principles or political ones, the professional one of, am I doing this for the right reasons? In broadcasting, I'll explain a little bit to you, because after all these years, there are just some things I won't do. There are just some formats I do not want to work in because I've done it and I just don't need to do it. And I don't mean to sound arrogant, but there are some things I will not put my name to. There are some things I will not put my hands into because they just run against my principles, or they run against, what I'm in this business for. Book-wise, I am thankful that, for example, Sunbury let me write this story, and when they looked at it, there was no objection whatsoever. They were totally cool with what I did. The next release, hopefully next year, Live from the Cafe, is a very different story. They just seem to like it. And I'm glad that they accept it in its totality and they accept the concept of what I write. I'm thankful for that. And I'm not saying I'd be a complete tight ass about things. I mean, if somebody had something to say to me about, like, the publisher said, well, look, think about this bit over here. As long as you're not killing the story, as long as you're not sanitizing it or screwing it up to the point that it can't be understood anymore, then I'm willing to talk to you. I'm willing to listen.
many thanks to Mr. Tory Gates for that great interview. And as the great Pete Townsend once said, I can do anything, right or wrong. I can talk anyhow and get along. I don't care anyway, I'll never lose. Anyway, anyhow, anywhere I choose. All right, we'll be right back, everybody.
Hi, Jason Greensides here for GoIndieNow. This month I want to talk about an independent film. It's French with English. It's in English, but a French production set in America. It's called Robber. It's a dark horror comedy about a guy named Robert who wakes up in the desert and discovers that he has psychic powers. The only difference is with this film is that Robert is a tire. What are you waiting for? Go watch it. Just watch it now. The main character's a tire. It rolls around the desert, discovers a few animals, kills them with its psychic power, and then starts killing humans. It's actually it is a great film. I highly recommend it. I mean, I don't know where you can go wrong, but it highlights the absurdity. It's about the absurdity of cinema, and that as the cop character says to the audience. And there's an audience in the desert who's watching the film through binoculars. Things happen for no reason, basically. It's all about things happen for no reason. So why not have the main character as a tire? Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, a rubber tire rolling through the desert, discovering people. That is like awesome. So it's steeped in 80s horror and 80s film in general. Just before the tire kills, it makes like this rattlesnake noise, like this tick, 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 tick. It's exactly the same noise that the alien in The Thing, in the John Carpenter remake, makes just before it kills. And the synth music, and it's brilliantly shot. All the shots of it rolling through the desert, is absolutely superb. And the music is wonderful. It's steeped in like zombie kind of horror, even though there's no zombies in it, but it's just got that kind of vibe about it. And it's absurd and funny, so you definitely have to check it out. There's an excellent quote near the end that's just so hilarious. They're trying to make it blow itself up, and they try and get him angry. So the cop says to the girl, who the tire I think is in love with or something, insult the tire, and she's just like, "You're nothing but a rubbish shit. You're nothing but a rubbish shit," and that is just hilarious. 5.8 on IMDb, 68% on Rotten Tomatoes. Those scores for this kind of thing, where people are just going to be like, because you'll get people who will read the synopsis, oh, it's about a tire, and then they'll watch the film and go, oh my god, that was about a tire, so I'm going to give it a really low rating. Whatever. It's a great film. It's about a tire. Check it out. Thanks.
So we finish our novel writer's salute episode with Mr. Scott Burtness. Scott is very, very funny, very poignant, and he has an affinity for the things he loves, which are beer, the Midwest, and monsters. Talk about your writing process. What is your writing process? Are you a plotter, pantser? What do you like to do?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm in a lot of different Facebook groups for indie authors and whatnot, and that comes up a lot. I don't know if I've actually been doing it long enough to really have figured out my process yet. I tend to be a little bit of a megalomaniac with my first drafts. Exception, but the first two books, I honestly felt like I could just hit publish on the first draft. I figured this is amazing. I cracked myself up. I don't need to polish this. It's good to go. So for me, it becomes a question of discipline. You know, really just taking the step back, taking the time to go back through that manuscript the 5, 6, 10 times that you need to something worth putting out into the world. You know, so for me, it's, I think the hardest part is just my enthusiasm tends to overrun a little too far, and I have to pull myself back a bit. It takes a lot to trust what you've created and put it out there for people to see. And you know, I think that going through the exercise of writing the books, working on the cover, and then actually hitting publish, you can't help but just really start to build up that self-confidence, that self-esteem, and hopefully create a virtuous cycle. You know, you put it out there and people actually like it, and then you get that feedback coming. But yeah, for me, you know, just the nervousness, the insecurity, and just being willing to put something out there was pretty huge for me. I lived out in California for a number of years, and I always joke that you have to have a screenplay to be allowed to stay. So I started just working on this idea for a screenplay so I wouldn't get kicked out of California.
Yeah.
For probably 6 or 8 years. And after I moved back to Minnesota in like late 2009, I figured, hey, I should probably just flip this over to a novel so I can actually do something with it. The process for that was a little weird because I, again, started as a screenplay and then went to book. Second book in the series, I just wrote it.
Nice.
I had a general idea for the story and just let it take me along for the ride. And it worked out pretty well. I was pretty happy with that. For the third book, and it didn't work at all. I got a first draft done and just hated it. It was just a meandering pile of manure. So now I'm actually going back and taking a fresh look at process. I've been working on actually plotting out the story, really defining the characters, what the arc's going to be. So I'm trying to be a little more intentional about this one.
Yeah, I know that 6-year struggle. That's all too real out there in Hollywood.
Yeah, it is.
And I think you have to have one in development to stay now. I don't think it's all about writing them anymore.
Nope, you have to have one complete, a couple of ready to pitch. I swear, if you get pulled over for rolling a stop sign, they ask for your screenplay before your license.
And then they ask for your agent.
Yeah.
Who you rep by? Nice. So, do you write in silence, or do you prefer having some sort of background noise or stimulation?
Yeah, I actually need a lot going on around me that I can actively block out so I can focus when I'm writing. So actually, one of my new favorite places to write just opened up in Minneapolis a couple months ago. A barcade. So it's a bar, 21 and up, but it's packed full of, I think, over 150 stand-up classic arcade games.
Wow.
They've got, it's an amazing place. They have the giant TVs, but instead of playing, what you might expect to find at your typical bar, it's all reruns of American Gladiators. It's wrestling. It's 80s classics. And on top of all that, Wi-Fi.
Wow.
So I can take my laptop, get a seat at the bar, have a pint of beer. There is a ton of just noise and energy around me, and it actually makes for a really good environment to write it because I can force myself to block that out, really focus on what I'm doing. I can't get distracted by the internets. I can't be jumping around on Facebook and everything else. And then when I need a break, if I hit a wall or kind of get stumped on a scene, I can walk over, play a couple of video games, and then head back to the bar and get right back to it.
How do you approach edits that you don't agree with?
It's funny. As an indie author with my first 2 books, my wife actually worked as my editor. First is content.
There was a lot of arguments then, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and she's also my cover designer. What's been interesting for me is that when I sit down to write the great American novel, I'm really trying to create stories that people will just enjoy and have a good time with. For me, reading's a nice escape. I get a lot of reading done when I'm taking the train to and from work. So I really enjoy what I write. I enjoy the scenes and the characters and the stories. If my wife says you really should consider trimming this scene down, tightening it up, taking this section out, I don't feel like a piece of my soul is being removed. I'm not that attached. But that said, I recently had a short story accepted for an anthology. Worked with a really tough editor, and moments like that where they come at you and they say, nope, this isn't good, you need to rework this entire section. All you can do is just appreciate that they're trying to help you make that story the best that it can be, and really just try and look at it through their eyes. Separate yourself from what you created and look at how it's being received by that other person.
Give us one tip for writing a comedic scene or writing something in tongue.
If you're writing somebody and you're really trying to give that character a sense of genuine realness, I tend to draw a lot of inspiration from what it's like to be an awkward high schooler. When you're still trying to figure out social relationships and get a handle on all these things, and just the number of times that the average teenager manages to put their foot in their mouth or make a fool of themselves or whatever, those moments never go away. I mean, we may get older, we may get better at controlling them, but there's always that sort of moment of awkwardness where you laugh at the wrong time or you stand up when everybody else is sitting. If you can grab onto those things and put them into your character, I think immediately that character becomes more relatable and by extension just more lovable.
Yeah, nice. That also layers in some comedy on top of that, which is cool.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. For me especially, when you look at the details that are just a couple of steps to the side of like the main point of the action. I know it's an old gag, but the idea of how does the vampire comb his hair if he has no reflection? And so now just think about that vampire trying to get ready for a date. Poor guy wants to look good for a first date. He has no idea how his hair looks. Now you have comedy.
Ask you then what the word indie means to you, and what's the best thing about being indie?
Yeah, so I mean, I tend to think of it pretty standard definition. Indie author is one that has not contracted with a publisher, whether that publisher be small, mid-sized, or one of the big houses. And then I know that there are a lot of authors that sort of fall into that hybrid space where they have some self-published titles, and then they also have some published titles. I guess technically I fall into the hybrid space because I do have a short story and a published anthology. But for me, I like being indie. I think that technology has really, really changed the entire landscape, and now you have the ability to actually get in and be discovered and be seen, build fans, build sales. And I also, I love bookstores. I love actual physical books. But I know that I personally tend to read probably 90% of my titles as ebooks. I think that the indie author has a lot of creative control over their product, how they want it to look, feel, when they want it to be released, who they want it to get to. The indie author can move a lot more quickly of creating and then getting it out there. So that level of control, freedom, and I've learned to appreciate it even more. I've received a couple of contract offers for my books, and I'm really, really open to having my works picked up by a publisher. But I'll tell you what, when you take a look at that first contract and you start to really think about what they're taking away and what you may be getting in return, it's pretty eye-opening.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the idea of being an indie author when I got started. After I had a couple of contracts come my way, I like being an indie author even more.
Are you completely through with writing screenplays, or do you hope to do it again once someday?
You know, great question. I would love to actually go back and now rework my novels as screenplays.
There you go.
It's I know it's a total long shot, but I really love the idea of my stories being on screen.
Talk a little bit about Vampire Books for Blood. What is it and how it got started?
Yeah, Vampire Books for Blood. So again, my first book, Wisconsin Vamp. It's a horror comedy that centers on a vampire up in the north woods of Wisconsin. I released it in early 2014. While I was working on the sequel, I was also starting to learn about just how hard it is to actually get your book out there, get people to see it. Some really nice work with charitable organizations where they had pledged to donate a portion of their earnings to a charity, and I liked that idea immediately. I do a lot of charitable work on my own, and so I started thinking about what would be a good charity to partner with if I wanted to do some promotional work. So the Red Cross, it's a blood services organization. It has a giant cross for its symbol. It seemed like a perfect fit for a vampire book. I've had some family and extended family that have been pretty directly impacted by their work from locally and said, hey, I'm thinking about donating a portion of my earnings for the month of October to the Red Cross. Would you guys be cool with that? How would that work? At the same time, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge happened. And I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yeah. Remember that?
Yes. I know it very well.
It was really pretty, it's pretty incredible because, one person or making an effort helps. But what that ALS Ice Bucket did was all of a sudden it made the act of getting involved and helping just go viral. And I realized, hey, a brand new author that nobody knows about making a donation to the Red Cross, it's going to do a little bit of good. But if I can get more people involved and if I can get more authors to take this challenge with me, to magnify the impact of this thing. So I made a corny YouTube video. I set up a Facebook page. And that first year I managed to convince 4 other authors to take the pledge and go with me. And we had 13 authors. And now this year, third year of the event, we're up to 34 authors, over 50 titles that have been pledged. Event's been expanded to include Canadian blood services so that Canadian authors can get on board. And it's really pretty fun. We have a website set up where readers can browse through all the books that are being basically put up for the event. Each author makes an individual pledge. So they might pledge to donate $1 per book that's sold, or 50% of their royalties, or maybe just a flat amount at the end of the month. In the month of October, we're all going to be promoting the event, promoting our involvement, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatnot. The idea just to get as many folks to go visit that website, check out the books, hopefully buy a few. And then at the end of the month, we're all going to make our donations. So yeah, just a fun way to bring authors and readers together and help support 2 really great organizations, the American Red Cross and Canadian Blood Services. I just really feel like the world is what you want to make it, and a way to make a difference.
That's our show, everybody. My many thanks to Mr. Scott Burtness for that fun interview that we did. So I want to leave you with a quote from Mr. J.D. Salinger, who once said, "What really knocks me out is a book that, when you're all done reading it, you wish that the author who wrote it was a terrific friend of yours, so you could call them up on the phone whenever you felt like it. That doesn't happen much, though." Well, Mr. Salinger would be happy to know that it does happen a lot more often these days. Well, not necessarily on the phone. I'm not sure who talks on the phone anymore unless you're talking to your immediate family. But all of us indie authors are online. That's the cool thing about it. We have social media platforms. We have our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, all the places that we interact with you, the fans. And nothing makes an indie author happier than engaging with their fan base and talking about their books. I mean, that's a dream come true for any indie author. So hopefully this episode you made 4 new friends. I would definitely go check all of these authors out and all the authors that we featured in new releases as well this month. And it just furthers my point. It's always time to go indie now. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.